Hi, my name is Karen Alexandra Nogues, and I'm a sophomore here in Courier House. Today I'm here with Elizabeth Ross, the Faculty Dean of Courier House, and I have several questions for her. So let's get started.
Sure. Thank you for having me here. This is a really wonderful opportunity.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm British and I have a background in laboratory science. I have a PhD in immunology and we moved to the States about 34 years ago. And I've been working in Africa since 1981. On and off, and in Uganda for the last almost 30 years. And for the last 20 years, I've been the director of a project that works with schools around a national park in Uganda, and we're really concerned with conservation, but through programs that support health and education and care for the environment in schools that border the national park.
Wow, that's so interesting. I'd like to ask you, as one of these segue questions, and actually because this is so important to the theme of this interview, being joyful at Harvard, I want to ask you a question. The question is, what brings you joy? You mentioned so many items, so many activities that you're involved with. I'd just like to hear from your perspective, what really brings you joy?
I think apart from the obvious things like family and friends and those kind of things that keep me busy, so that are intellectually stimulating and actually speak to what I consider my skills are. And I think, of course, that because of the work I do, which is supporting people who are in some kind of need or other. I mean, I think all of us feel joy from feeling that we're actually making an impact in other people's lives in a positive way.
Wow. And what motivates or sustains you to do the work that you're doing?
That's a difficult one. I think some of it is selfish. You know, that it's something that I'm good at. It's probably the first thing in my life that I've ever been really good at, and it's been very successful, the project. And I've got a huge amount of pleasure out of learning about becoming so involved in another culture. I wouldn't say I knew very much about it even after 20 years, but I know the people that I work with, and seeing the changes in their lives has been amazingly fulfilling. And then, I think that's the wonderful thing about education projects, because it actually doesn't matter that much how long they last, because for those people you impact in that time frame that you're working in education, it changes their lives forever.
If there's a particular incident in your life in which you thought, maybe I want to go into this work, or you started touching on it when you talked about your experience in the Congo for a year. I mean, was there a particular incident or a time you can recall where you decided, this is what I want to do? This is for me.
I don't think so. I mean, I just loved being in Africa, and I think that anyone who hasn't been there already, I feel a little envious of them, because I think the first impact is just incredible.
The vast impact.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
It's just beautiful. It's wonderful, and I just love that. And then I was an army brat. My father was in the army, so I was born in Malaysia, and I travelled a lot as a child. So I think that sort of was the norm. So I always wanted to go on to the next place.
If there's a particular incident in your life in which you thought, maybe I want to go into this work, or you started touching on it when you talked about your experience in the Congo for a year. I mean, was there a particular incident or a time you can recall where you decided, this is what I want to do? This is for me.
I don't think so. I mean, I just loved being in Africa, and I think that anyone who hasn't been there already, I feel a little envious of them, because I think the first impact is just incredible.
The vast impact.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
It's just beautiful. It's wonderful, and I just love that. And then I was an army brat. My father was in the army, so I was born in Malaysia, and I travelled a lot as a child. So I think that sort of was the norm. So I always wanted to go on to the next place. Going to Uganda, I was taken. A friend of mine who taught in one of these schools, after we'd been there for about 8 or 9 years, said, you have to come and see the school I work in, and it was just terrible. I mean, part of it had fallen down. It's an earthquake zone, so you get these tremors.
What age level? Is it primary school?
It's primary school.
Primary school.
We work only in primary schools.
Oh, only in primary schools.
And only in government primary schools. They're all public schools.
Oh, that's interesting.
And she said, this, this building is condemned, and we have to evacuate the children when the wind blows in case it falls on them.
Oh, wow.
And we said, oh gosh, well, we can build a classroom. And my sister-in-law and her husband were there as well, and they said, yeah, we can build a classroom.
Wow.
So that's how it started. And
that's interesting.
we had the people that worked with us had children that were going to these schools, and then we were very concerned about conservation, and a Ugandan friend of ours said, well, what are these kids going to do? Their schools are absolutely appalling. They're going to drop out, or they're going to stay here, and then what are they going to do? They're going to farm progressively smaller and less fertile patches of land, and then when things get tough, they're going to turn to the forest for firewood, for meat, for poles to build with. They're going to cut down trees. And he said, if you want to try and help with the conservation, you need to make the schools better. So that's what we did. And we started with one school, and we now have 14 in our program.
14 schools?
Yes, and we don't deal with private schools at all. They're all public schools.
I mean, they're all public schools. And so if you could give advice, I mean, this is really important to us as students. I mean, myself as a sophomore, and for college students here. I mean, if you could give advice to your younger self related to your current life's work or what has inspired you, do you think you would have advice you'd like to give to students in the college as we start to think of the career paths we pursue?
Well, I think I would say that life changes.
Yeah.
And I think one's perception of what you're good at changes.
Okay.
And I was a laboratory scientist, and I enjoyed it very much, but it wasn't what I was really good at. I don't have the I think for research you need imagination, and I didn't have a lot of I don't have a lot of imagination. So if I could go back, I would take a different course, because clearly what I'm good at is administering things and writing grants and that kind of stuff. So, but I didn't know that then, and I didn't find it out until I actually had to do it through this project in Uganda. And then I realized that actually this is what I'm good at. So I think I would say you keep searching for and trying lots of new things, because you never know what it is that you're going to find that that fits you.
It fits you.
Yeah. I guess the other thing I would say is one of the things that kind of frightened me a little when I was younger was writing. And I guess there are really good writers, and obviously there are people who are really talented at writing, but mostly it's practice.
That's true.
And that's one thing I've learned from writing reports and grants and just endless stuff. You learn how to write well by practicing. So maybe everything in life is like that. You keep practicing at it, and you stay open to opportunities that may not ever have occurred to you, and you may find that that's your slot.
That's interesting. It's not about necessarily deciding what you think you're good at now and then maybe just sticking with that. It's also about exploration.
Yes.
That's so important, because I think that even for us here at Harvard, I think so often when we're choosing a concentration, the temptation is to just see, what have I been good at so far in my life, and then choose that path and stick with that and ignore maybe the rest. But it's really about, maybe it's not necessarily that. It's really about thinking about, what do I want to do with my life? How can I explore more here, use opportunities here, and not just think about what have I been good at until now.
Right, because I was good at science. That's all I wanted to do from the time I was 12. And so that's what I did, and then I sort of, as one does as a student, you go to university, and then you get pulled into graduate work because that's the next step. And things are a lot more flexible for you now, so you can take a couple of years off and try something else and then go back to graduate school. The British system is very rigid, and it was particularly rigid then, so if I had dropped out for a year to do something else, it would have been hard to go back to graduate school. And so I don't think I thought very clearly about what I was doing. I would suggest now that people take time to try other things and think about it. I think that doing a PhD stood me in really good stead for what I do now, because I can do statistics, I know how to design experiments, so the way that we run our project is we do lots of evaluations, and we think carefully about the evaluations so that we know what the results of what we're doing are, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. So I'm not saying that experience hasn't really helped me with what I do now, but it probably wasn't the ideal job for me, stretched for anything.
And I'd like to ask you, this is also, and this question I know is a difficult one, but we'd still like to have your opinion on this. When I say the word success, what comes to mind?
Well, clearly it's not economic success, because everything we do is voluntary.
Yeah.
So for some people, that's a measure of success, is how much money you make.
Yeah.
I think feeling like you've led a good and fulfilling life, and it's, you know, you're at the beginning of yours, and I'm moving towards the end of mine, and when I look back on my life, there are things that lots of things I wish I hadn't done, and there are times when it wasn't that great, but on the whole, I think I feel that I have contributed.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Very powerful.
probably, that makes me feel successful, because, and I'm good at writing grants.
Yeah. And before we end, I'd like to just ask, I mean, when you thought about, I mean, how did you come to the decision to become faculty dean of Courier House? What motivated that decision?
So, our children had just, the last of our kids had gone to college.
Yeah.
And we had a house that was too big for us, and we wanted to downsize and think about other things. And David Pilbeam, who was the acting dean of the college, works with Richard, and they were talking one day, and he said, "So what's going on in your life?" And Richard said, "Well, you know, we're at this point, we think we're going to sell the house and move into something smaller, and, you know, we're sort of thinking about post-children life."
Yeah.
And David said, "Have you ever thought about becoming,"
Wow.
was then housemasters? And I think once, much earlier, Richard had been approached about doing this, but he had, you know, our children were at school, and it was just too complicated. And so we said, "Well, no, but actually that sounds really interesting." And one of the things that was really, you know, we were looking for something new, and also something to do together, which was which was a real attraction, that this was something that we could do together, because children tend to, you know, it's a busy time when you have children, and you don't spend a lot of time together. So, and it just seemed like neither of us actually knew very much about it. So it was a bit like, you know, jumping in the deep end. But we knew that we were really interested in the students, and we knew that it was going to be very fulfilling and fun to be with a lot of, you know, young people who are really terrific. And it has been. I mean, you know, it's been terrific. Yeah.
And what have you found most fulfilling about
being a faculty dean?
Being faculty dean?
Well, I think some of the bit that speaks to my sort of organising bossy side.
Yeah.
I like the organisational aspect. So a lot of that is the parts that the house doesn't see. So, you know, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that the students don't see. You would see it if it didn't happen, because things wouldn't run, right?
Sure.
So I think I've enjoyed that. I've really liked being part of a community. I've loved working with Patricia, and we've had on the whole, terrific tutors, and being part of a team has been very satisfying. And then getting to know the students has been just wonderful. You know, it's just been... And then, and you asked about success, you know, in not many cases, but there have been a few cases where I've been able to help students think about what they want to do next, and provide them with opportunities and references and that kind of thing. So that's been nice
useful,
too.
yeah.
That's been great, yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I don't think so. I guess I would just say I would just repeat again that life is, you know, has its ups and downs, but is mostly pretty exciting. And I think, you know, there are things that I would do now that I would never have done at your age, because I was too nervous. I didn't have the confidence. I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing, and I felt embarrassed about making an idiot of myself. And I think that I know that's natural to feel like that, but I wish now, looking back, that I hadn't been quite so self-conscious about a lot of stuff, because actually it doesn't matter if you make an idiot of yourself. People are far too tied up in how they're feeling about themselves to notice.
I heard that before too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.